Hi, I'm Say, and this video is part of a series featuring Black voices and artists. My perspective has vastly shifted through heart-to-heart conversations and art like the one you're about to witness. If you like to support the Black Lives Matter movement, I invite you to join me in listening deeply so we can be transformed and learn what course of action will be most effective for us to take. Feel free to join the conversation by leaving comments on the video. Thanks. Hi, everyone. We're here to have a conversation about intersectionality, how to be a good accomplice, not just an ally, and how companies can support intersectionality in the workplace. And I'm here with my friend, Darius Brown, who was featured in my coming out video. Darius, would you like to share a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. I'd like to say that I had the good fortune to meet, back when they were at Workday, and we were together there, I think, for 2 years, because I met them back in 2017, and just really made the smart decision to keep Say in my life as both a colleague, a coworker, and a friend. So I get to pat myself on the back because I feel pretty smart about that. I guess a little bit about me, living out here in Dublin, California, happily married with two lovely daughters. Looking forward to the opportunity to just have this free-flowing talk and see where it goes.
Can you help define what is intersectionality and why it's relevant to conversations about equity?
I think for me personally, intersectionality, if we think about our human experience, think about the idea that we have little pieces of us. When I think about my aspects of intersectionality, it's kind of like a Venn diagram that overlaps. So I'm, a cisgender male, and I'm Black, and I'm a parent, and I work in corporate America, and so I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a son. So all of these different pieces of me really help make the whole of Darius Brown. And when I look at what intersectionality is, it's about how those pieces overlap with other individuals' pieces as well. And I think just maybe respecting the parts that make up an individual is really, in my mind, what intersectionality comes down to. It's not just about seeing what's on the outside, but really is about seeing, how people define themselves and the pieces and parts that they define for themselves, and making sure that we treat all those with respect. And I think maybe that's the equity or quality piece of it. Every person's piece of themselves is equal and valid, right? There's no one piece of somebody that is more important or one piece of somebody that is less important. There may be things that they maybe choose to emphasize depending on the space that they're in, but all of those pieces are valid, and all of those pieces need to be respected, and all of those pieces, I think, need to be evaluated when you're looking at interacting with somebody in an intersectional manner. Part of what I've seen definitely with some of the more recent protests around the killing of George Floyd and Tamir Rice, and Breonna, and just so many names, is this idea that I think that everybody is really trying to get to a place of, well, why can't we just move on, or why can't you ignore that piece of you? And I think maybe that's the one thing I'd say that's very dangerous about when people ignore intersectionality. We're not asking you, it's almost like someone is asking you to put a piece of yourself away and not share that with the world. And I can't fathom being in a place where, where you're not able to be your full authentic self. So that's maybe the other part I'd add about intersectionality. It's really making sure that you're not telling someone that a piece of them is invalid.
From my own personal experience, before Asian American, I lived 20 years as both male and female presenting. And when I was hiding, the part of me that felt, more masculine, it really dampened me and my ability to be productive, to really come alive. Like I just, like when we're hiding parts of ourselves, it really, if we talk about it from more of a business perspective, I really wasn't performing at my potential. But more important than that, that's like inhumane to expect and ask people to shut down and hide parts of themselves. And it really is like, as I shared in my coming out video, like I was dying inside, and nobody should have to live that way.
It is impossible to bring your to operate at 100% when you spend so much time dealing with, I think, maybe the microaggressions that come, and obviously as a cisgender Black male, I feel something similar. The idea that, if I have to spend 10% or 15% of my brain power dealing with the microaggressions that I deal with, not necessarily at work, but maybe there's microaggressions as I'm coming to and from work, maybe the microaggressions that are happening to me, or the incidents of racism that happen to me as I'm going to lunch or doing something else, it really doesn't allow me to focus my 100%, or the full capability of what I can do at work. Because like you said, you spend so much time constructing something in a shell to hide, or constructing something to protect yourself. You're always on guard, and that's difficult to manage, especially day in and day out. However many days a year we work here in the United States, but that's tough.
In a previous conversation, right after the murder of George Floyd, you mentioned the emotional toll and the labor, and just how much it weighed on you. And so I want to ask you, this is something that came out at Lesbians Who Tech. Like, the conversation moved from just allyship or optical allyship to being an active accomplice to help you with the emotional labor and our, fellow Black workmates, and fostering safe and brave spaces. So with the current climate, we've seen in the past few weeks, how can we do better as a community to drive positive impact and change and help get that weight off of you?
Well, it's a multi-layered topic, and I think part of what's got to happen is individuals who do have the ability to actually influence the levers of power, and power is I think a broad amorphous term here. But people who do have the ability to impact those really need to understand that the hard work was not lifting up the mirror. I've had many conversations with individuals say, wow, we lifted up the mirror to ourselves. Wasn't that tough? I guess we're good now. And it's like, no, the lifting up the mirror was the first and easiest step. The hard work really lies in, for lack of a better term, the hard work that's going to come from looking in that mirror and understanding what's here. So when you ask about how can people help alleviate that, I think just recognizing, one, that there's a large section of your coworkers, the people who are in your circle, who are struggling with what you and I just talked about before, this need to carry so much of it on themselves. Because let's see, I graduated in 1993, so for 27 years, I have been thoroughly trained in my corporate life to never discuss these things at work and to never talk about these sort of aspects. So I'm encouraged that we have this new way in which people can talk about it. But I understand that there are people who don't have the language. And so maybe if we talk about how you can support individuals, it's really, I guess you mentioned the term accomplice. And I think it's really asking people how and where they need you, and not coming in with the privilege that you can solve the problem immediately. I understand a lot of people are looking to see how they can help. And especially here in the United States, we very much focus on quick solutions, but there are no quick solutions here. And so being comfortable with the idea that you may not have the answer, and being comfortable with the idea that you may need to ask somebody how and where they need you to show up, and maybe putting yourself in a secondary position is maybe what individuals can do if they're looking to help alleviate. Just ask me how I need you. Don't come in and tell me how you're going to help.
As accomplices, where we need to start is deep listening. Something that Glennon Doyle shared at Lesbians Who Tech, and
Okay.
she's an accomplice and author of Untamed, but she talks about what's performative work and what's transformative work. And 80% of our work needs to be hidden underwater like a glacier. Only the small parts to be visible in terms of our work with racism. And we're going to get bumped in advocacy work. And when we actually do the work that changes what's in our mug, so that when we do get bumped, the right thing comes out, deep humility. Like, us apologizing when we do say the wrong things, because we will say the wrong things, and having the right energy. If I'm in a place of humility, if I'm in a place of deep listening, if I'm in a place of following, Black leaders, that's when the right thing is going to overflow in what I share. So I would encourage people, like, there's a lot of behind the scenes work that we can do before showing up.
And I think, say, you're hitting a great point, because a lot of times, so I've had many colleagues come up to me and say, hey, I'm here, I want to help. Can you tell me a little bit what's going on? And I think even in that approach, there's a little bit of privilege, because, like you said, there hasn't been the education. There hasn't been maybe a little bit of introspection. I kind of look at it like, buying a house. No one buys a house on without going to and researching and what kind of neighborhood it is, what kind of schools there are. And I would think that maybe people preparing themselves for these type of conversations would help, because when you do that, it shows in the authenticity. It's the idea that that you don't know, but you're asking for help to be a little better. And I think people can appreciate that, as opposed to someone who shows up and has done no research and expects you to provide a solution to a problem that they didn't solve. That's I think a very privileged act to put on a community. I think the other thing I would add is that, especially for individuals who have coworkers who are different, whether it be ethnic or different from a sexuality perspective, or different in any way, shape, or form, be very, very careful about asking people to share their stories with you, because many times people have gone through a lot of trauma, and asking someone to relive the trauma that they've gone through time and time again for your education is difficult to do. Some people are going to be willing with that, some people are not. And just be okay with the idea if someone says to you, hey, I'm really not prepared to talk about that bad experience that I had with the police, or that bad experience when somebody beat me up because I was different. You have to be okay with, like you said, doing a little deep listening. And also, maybe I'd add to that, maybe just some deep patience, and going at the pace that is set for you, as opposed to going to the pace of how you want to help.
It reminds me of Austin Channing Brown. She's the author of I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness. And she talks about, like, it is tremendous emotional labor to talk about trauma. And it's not the job for Black people to educate us about racism. And frankly, it's not their job. Like, our ignorance is our responsibility. And, therefore, so is our education and the education of others. And one resource that I would recommend is called Justice in June. It's justiceinjune.org, or you can just Google Justice in June. But it breaks it down to 10 minutes a day, 25 minutes a day, or 45 minutes a day, depending on what track you want to do. But it gives you recommendations on what to read, what to watch, what to do to take action. And just, for those who just need a curriculum, this is it. If you want to learn how to be an accomplice, really Google Justice in June, or go to justiceinjune.org. Because for me, like, it's been tremendously helpful. Like, I don't need to ask anyone else to educate me. This is a resource that has been, endorsed and approved. And it frankly it has been extremely helpful for me to, there's so much of history that is we have not been exposed to. The fact that Juneteenth has only come onto the national radar this year is just appalling. And but these are things that it's our responsibility that we didn't get this education. And now we gotta get it quickly.
Very true. Very, very true.
Another question I had for you is, how can or should companies support and make space for intersectionality in the workplace?
Well, I think the first part is, one, companies absolutely should make space for intersectionality, because it goes to what I was talking about before. If intersectionality is viewed as pieces of an individual, you want to make space for your workers. And your workers are made up of these pieces and these parts. And so when you make a space for all of the pieces and parts, by default, you're making space for the workers in totality. And I think one of the other things I would point about is, there's a lot of research, I think it was McKinsey, that talked about, some of the most unhappy people in the corporate America workspace are Black women, or cis Black women, and people with disabilities. And I would urge companies to maybe think about those two populations, not to the exclusion of others, but the idea that if you make a space where Black women feel supported and nourished and nurtured, and as well as disabled people find a space that is not specially tailor-made for them, but at least is acknowledging the fact that they are here. So if there are some special needs, whether it be ramps or wider bathroom stalls or elevators or whatever it is, I think doing these things for the individuals who are statistically rated as the unhappiest in a company, making those people happy, I think has the effect of a rising tide lifting all ships. By default, that will sort of lift up other individuals. And you'll find, I think corporations would find that when they do this for one particular group, it has the effect of helping other groups feel happy as well.
What's happening with Black Lives Matter is affecting, not only our Black employees, but all of us. This is something that is weighing on all of us. And the best thing we can do is stop being silent about it. Like JP Morgan Chase, they held a company-wide forum on race with C-level executives, and he shared the recording and guides for continuing the discussion. And it needs to be modeled from the top down, that it's okay, we're human. This is a massive systemic injustice that is being exposed, and we can't deny or ignore it. It's not the human thing to do, like you're saying, Darius.
No, I agree. And I think, one of the things I've quoted, from a long time ago with my mentees and people who have mentored me, what gets measured gets done. And, if there are directors who want to be VPs, there are VPs who want to be SVPs, there are SVPs who want to be, executive vice presidents. I'm old enough to remember a pretty cheesy drug commercial where the father walks in and he asks the kid, how did you learn to do drugs? Who taught you this? And the kid blurts back, I learned it by watching you. And so when you talk about the modeling this from the top, the executives who want to get to the next level in their careers, they're looking upward right now to see who are the people in charge and what are they modeling and what are they doing and how are they being successful. I think that's one of the most powerful things that executives right now, especially at the C levels, we can do, is just model the behavior that they want to see in their up and coming executives. And also make sure that not only are they modeling it, but you're also putting some emphasis on the fact that this is being looked at. If I have two people who are equally qualified and one person has a much better history of building diverse teams, that's something that I'm going to look at when I'm evaluating the next round of promotion. If I have the employee who has tremendous, P&L responsibility and has done great from the bottom line dollar perspective, but, Black and Asian women are leaving that person's group at numbers that are far greater than the average for every other ethnic minority, I need to take a look at that and, say, hey, I'm going to evaluate you as a complete manager, not just on the bottom line profit. So those things I think really do matter in terms of, realize for any C-level executive who out there listening to this, that your people are looking at you. And it's not only what you say in your public meetings, but it's also the behavior that you model in those in-betweens. When, the behavior that you model when no one from the outside is watching. That's what people really pay attention to.
That's so true. I got to tell a story you're reminding me of. When I was at Workday, CEO Anil came to a very small Pride happy hour right before the Pride Parade at the San Francisco office. And I happened to be one of the organizers that year. And he came up to me and he just struck up a conversation. And, we were giving out Pride, temporary tattoos. And he's like, give me a few of those. And he put them all on his hands. And to me, that just spoke volumes. He's like, he made it very clear by his actions and words, like, I'm with you, I'm for you, and I will identify, as your ally. And that really, modeled to me. I felt safer, even more, like I was already feeling safe to be myself, but even more safe to have the CEO do that for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have one last question for you. Um,
Okay.
what actionable next step do you want to leave the audience with?
The action step I would say is the work has to continue. It's again a little bit cliche, but this truly is a journey and not a destination. I think one of the most, I think back to the election of Barack Obama, and one of the things that I remember was, some of my colleagues coming to me and say, wow, we've finally done it. We've finally broken through the race barrier. Now we can move on. And it was very interesting because my experience with race and racism in the United States have been very different than theirs. And I think just really maybe bringing it back to the idea that it really is truly an individual journey. So whatever steps you take to either educate yourself, not everybody's going to go out and march and protest. Not everybody is going to hop on social media. But there are definitely things that individuals can do in their own personal sphere of influence to help move this forward. So, maybe it's holding that conversation with your uncle who says horrifically chauvinistic and misogynistic and racist things at the dinner table because he feels safe enough to do that. And yeah, it may be difficult because maybe you've known this family member for all of your life, but, they're still saying something that if you don't call them on it, it's really not about changing them. I think it's really make sure that that person doesn't change you, and letting them know that, hey, I disagree with you, hey, you're still my family member. I still love you. I still appreciate these things in you. But however, and I guess I say and, not but, and, this is hurtful to people who are not in this room. These are hurtful to my allies. These are hurtful to my friends. And so just giving bullies the notice that, you're not here for the bull junk and that, that's not going to be acceptable, I think could speak volumes, because I think there's a lot of social norming that comes when we call out bad behavior. And when that bad behavior is not called out, that person then feels that they're empowered to do this everywhere.
To me, I think we undervalue these touch points, these just conversations that really shift mindsets more than anything. I've heard wonderful speakers, but when it comes down to it, like, it's all about relationship.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, you're welcome.